Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'd love to talk to you about my least favorite topic to talk about, and that is anti-Semitism. Least favorite because who wants to live in a world with such a thing? And the reason why it's on my mind is because just look at the news. Kanye West, Kyrie Irving, I learned who he was a couple weeks ago because I live under a rock. Dave Chappelle, I definitely knew who he was because I've been a fan of his since the 90s. And I think he's hilarious, but we'll talk about his contributions or lack thereof in a moment. Has everyone been following the news about this? When I say those three names, is that a headline you're familiar with? Kanye West got into a lot of trouble, what was it, a couple weeks ago? Maybe 3 weeks ago now, 2 weeks ago? Because he sent out some fairly odd tweets. One of them was about going to, not DEF CON, but DEF CON 3 on Jewish people. That was just one of several different things that all happened around the same time period. He wore a White Lives Matter sweatshirt at some fashion show. He also, I guess, got into some various conversations, and one of them was he was talking about Adidas, who he had a sneaker deal with, saying he could say all sorts of anti-Semitic stuff, and he was so big that Adidas could never drop him, and sure enough, Adidas dropped him. Who was it that was joking about this? Was it Jon Stewart, maybe? Jewish comedian. He said, you know it's bad when Adidas, by the way, was the official footwear company of Nazi Germany. When you're too anti-Semitic for Adidas, who got their start with the Nazis, they're a different company now. I'll be fair to them. They're a different company now. But that's their origins. Them and Hugo Boss. But Kanye West got into a lot of trouble with that. By the way, he definitely did not come out well at the end of it because by getting dropped by Adidas, he lost something like $1 billion just by virtue of getting dropped by them. Kyrie Irving, who again, I learned who he was a few weeks ago because I live under a rock. So those of you who are ahead of me, congratulations. But I guess he also, right around the same time period, perhaps motivated by that, released a link to a book, which is still on sale from Amazon, by the way. Amazon's making a killing off of it now, I believe, that had a lot of anti-Semitic tropes in it. And then Dave Chappelle felt the need to weigh in on all this on Saturday Night Live. And he took some heat for some possibly anti-Semitic stuff. So let me share with you what I think. One is, none of this is being done in a vacuum. There's a context to all of it. And the context is that within the United States, anti-Semitism, defined as not just things that people are thinking, but actual crimes being committed, meaning anti-Semitic crimes, which the FBI keeps track of. Hate crimes against Jews are the single most, and it's not even close, the single most number of hate crimes committed against any religious group in the United States. This ranges from things like acts of vandalism. There was a Chicago Jewish cemetery that was recently vandalized. It could be assault, it could be whatever. There's more hate crimes against Jewish people, Jewish organizations in the United States than any other religious group in the United States. The FBI keeps track of all the data. It's not even close. The FBI and the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, has noticed a trend where year after year, there's more and more anti-Semitic hate crimes. Every year, it's a little bit worse. And, you know, there's all sorts of apologists saying, well, it's a flow over from what's happening in the Middle East, or it's this, or it's that, or it's whatever. But, you know, when the Jewish cemetery gets desecrated, it's hard to see a direct connection to anything but anti-Semitism in that regard. Whatever Kanye West thinks of me or any other Jewish person doesn't directly hurt me, meaning I've never met them and I'm never going to meet them. The problem with somebody like Kanye West or Kyrie Irving is their social media has a term which is really helpful here called influencers. They're influencers. Influencers are people that have a lot of people following them. Kanye West's sneakers are really no better than any other sneaker, except he designed them, and a lot of people like Kanye West, so it's a billion-dollar industry for him. Or it was. Kyrie Irving, great basketball player, in addition to all sorts of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, he also believes the earth is flat. He has millions of people following him online. The problem's not that it's just one more person cracking a joke or making a statement or whatever, as though it's happening in complete isolation from the American context. It is happening within an American context, and that context is that these people, by virtue of their fame, can either be helpful or they can be problematic, or perhaps they could stay out of it. If they're going to weigh in on Jews, Judaism, the Jewish people, anti-Semitism, they have to realize that right now we're in an era of rising amounts of hate crimes, where there are victims, and maybe we're not direct victims of Kanye West, but we might be about somebody who's influenced by him, or Kyrie Irving, because these are wealthy, whatever successful means, successful people who have way more influence than any of us. Kyrie Irving, who believes the earth is flat, has a bigger microphone than Jonathan Greenblatt, the president of the ADL. You want proof? Look at how many people follow each of them on social media. It's millions compared to thousands. It's not even close. And so that's what worries me about it. Dave Chappelle, perhaps not quite as bad as the others, and that's, I suppose, a little bit controversial in and of itself, just how anti-Semitic was Dave Chappelle's thing. But like I said, he's on stage on Saturday Night Live. He's got one of the biggest platforms there is. And everyone's listening. And he closed his monologue by saying, it shouldn't be this hard to talk about things. And I agree with that. It's hard for me to talk about things in a room of 250 people on the High Holy Days. Pick a topic that somebody's not going to come up to me afterwards and say, I'm quitting my membership at TKC because you talked about X, Y, or Z. You laugh, it's happened. I get what he's saying. It shouldn't be this hard to talk about things, but there's a responsibility when it comes to having a microphone. Because yes, we all have free speech, but we don't all have platforms that big. And we have to realize that people are going to hear what we say and act on it, possibly. After Kanye West's outbursts, you could see in California people hanging from the bridge the sign that says Kanye West was right about the Jews, and you could see the projections up on the stadium in Jacksonville, Florida, complaining about Jewish people, saying things like Kanye was right about the Jews. When does this become a problem? It becomes a problem when it feels so normal that it's hard to even critique. When people who aren't Jewish, start wondering, well, what's the problem? It's free speech, it's this, it's that, it's the other. Meanwhile, our own identity gets called into question. So what's the response from the Jewish community? Well, there's a lot. The ADL does its own work, and they're great. We'll let them stay in their lane, we'll stay in our lane. But I think one of them is this. One is, we shouldn't let other people define us. Part of the problem of hate speech, and this is true whether it's a celebrity talking about us as Jews, or whether it's an individual calling us bad names to our face. You know, when you're a kid when kids are teased in school, the worst thing is they might start to internalize the teasing. Start thinking, well, maybe the bully has a point. We get to define ourselves. We can be proud of who we are. the Jews, whatever that means. Think of all the debates we have just within TKC, much less the Jews around the world. The Jews aren't doing anything to anybody. Individual Jews, maybe. The Jews, no. We can define what Judaism means. We, as Jews, are the best people to do so for us. And that's true of Jewish people around the world. I don't like it one bit when somebody who's not Jewish tries to define me, particularly when Jews don't come off looking so good. Not to say we can't take critiques, if need be, from friends. I worry when they're not friends. Somebody saying, I'm going to DEF CON 3 on Jewish people, isn't a friend. So getting to define who we are, being proud of who we are, means, I'll put it this way. When I was a kid growing up, I knew somebody who was Jewish, who was a descendant of Holocaust survivors, and I've never lived that experience, and my family was in America long before the Holocaust ever happened, so I don't really have any family directly involved. But she was raised to hide her Judaism, didn't really have any Jewish upbringing because of it. The teaching in her house was, it's dangerous to be Jewish, so we're not going to be Jewish. She showed her family. She grew up. She's a super Jew now. She got curious about what it is that she wasn't allowed to see or touch or had to hide from the rest of the world. But that was the response. It's dangerous to be Jewish, so therefore we turn it off. I say perhaps the best way to do it is be more Jewish. Let people know, who might not know, you're Jewish. It's a Jewish holiday. It's Hanukkah or it's Shabbat or it's whatever. Let them know who you are. And that's one of the best ways perhaps to be proud, open, committed Jews making a positive influence in the world. That's perhaps one of the best ways to reduce anti-Semitism and build understanding. The temple I grew up at in Florida has a day school attached to it. It was started by the temple. Don't know what it is now, but something like 10, 15 years ago, I was speaking to their school director. She was telling me that 90% of the school is not Jewish. 10% is. It's the demographics of the place in Florida. 10% is Jewish, 90% isn't. The school's attached to the temple. They learn about all the Jewish holidays. Before snack and lunch, they sing the motzi, blessing over the bread, and on and on and on. And the school director says, we do it because you have a whole bunch of non-Jewish people here who are going to learn something about Judaism, and they're going to be your best friends. The best way to combat anti-Semitism is introduce people who aren't Jewish to Judaism. Not the Judaism as presented by Kanye West, but the Judaism that's presented by a neighbor, or a friend, or a loved one. And that's it, I think. We don't minimize it. We never minimize it. We don't brush off something that Kanye West said just because he's got this problem going on in his life. And we don't brush off something Dave Chappelle said because we're a fan and I think he's hilarious, but we don't brush it off just because he's funny. We say anti-Semitism is a serious and growing problem in America. In a way, it never was when I was a kid, by the way. I grew up in small-town Florida. Small-town Florida. We look to the north to Jacksonville as the major metropolis of the area. But I grew up in Ormond Beach, Florida, population 20,000, just north of Daytona Beach. If you took the entire county, top to bottom, 100,000 people. Small town. I don't remember anybody ever having a problem with me for being Jewish. I don't remember ever hearing an anti-Semitic comment. Maybe I just live in a very sheltered corner of my very small town in Florida. It wasn't South Florida, by the way. It was like North Central, which is different. Now I hear stories. I hear stories from kids at school. I'm showing up at school board meetings because there's an incident at Pope or Walton or Lassiter or Centennial in Roswell where there's graffiti of swastikas all over the place. Teens tell me stories about how they see a swastika scrawled in a bathroom stall at school. Or an offhand comment made by a friend who doesn't really know what it means. But still they hear it. You're just trying to Jew me. whatever it is. So we have to know who we are. We have to be comfortable defining who we are, standing up and being a model of what's best in Judaism, through our commitment, through our friendliness, and really not letting this stuff go, just like nobody should. Because it's not one person, it's millions listening to them. Shabbat Shalom.